So this is going to be the sort of final narrated screencast of my project for game 312. And here you'll see looks relatively similar to what I submitted earlier this week, but I dabbled. I didn't dabble as much as I'd like to, so I added water, and I added some foliage to the space, so it feels more full, as well as some local area fog at the base here to kind of blur the edge of the map, and I texturized the landscape. Not great, but a little bit so that it doesn't, the whole map feels a little less uh, plasticky. And I'll get into a little bit of how I worked with all of that here. So the water, honestly, is one of the easiest ones. It simply entailed enabling a few plugins, namely the landmass and water plugins within the game engine. And I installed a lake, which is really cool because it gives you these splines, so you can kind of shape your water. Over here you can adjust velocity. You can add you can adjust wavelengths, all sorts of really cool stuff, and color. So I was going for the general color that water takes when it's up in glacial areas, which is kind of very pale blue. I readjusted some of the colors and the specularness of the environment, so it kind of looks a little bit more unique. So you install this, and then I installed a river water body. You can use Alt and drag on each of these points to create additional splines. You just kind of drag it down and shape it. So I shaped it more or less into the general shape of my original river, like various depth heights. From what I remember of hydrology classes from my environmental science days. And then you adjust the speed at each point. So in slightly steeper sections, you can increase the speed of your river. In slightly wider ones, you can slow it back down, increase the depth. Make for a very realistic thing. Now, if I were to have more time and the ability to really get into it, you can create some additional uh, materials you can use instead of their sort of base one. I did dabble with one earlier that looked pretty cool, which could be helpful if you're dealing with like multiple shapes and sizes of bodies, and also getting these to line up just right so that the lake and the river don't overlap is another small thing. Making sure that this looks like it should naturally blend into this is at times a little rough, but still figuring that piece out. And then I made foliage. So in here, it began with uh, a single blade of grass. That is it on its side. But after shaping a little piece of grass, then we made a foliage. So we did this by taking my single blade of grass, bending it, shaping it, and then in the modeling, come in here, and then we would create a pattern. So once you open the pattern, you can kind of create a bunch of the same version of a single blade of grass. So if we we'd want to start with basically this guy. So get it positioned, and then we'd hit pattern, and we can kind of create a bunch of them, rotate them a little bit, have scaling differences so that it creates kind of a varied mesh. Um, I had seen two methods of putting your foliage throughout the map, one of which I liked a lot, and one of which I didn't really like. It was a little bit clunkier. So the original tutorial I was following in building my grass uh, involves the use of PCG graphs, and it was really helpful for learning a way of blocking out like very specific areas. But I did find that if I had like a foliage that I liked, and I'm but in particular in this case where I really have kind of one type and I'm like trying to space it sporadically so that there's some naked spots and stuff like that. Um, it is generally easier to just use the foliage setting within the modeling tools here. I'll get into that. But the PCG map was fun. Um, so this is kind of a little bit of what goes into it. So you get your landscape data and a surface sampler. Then you do a transform points, as well as a create points grid. What this does is kind of creates an overlay onto your map in which it randomly selects places for everything to go. Pretty cool, but I feel like this is ultimately a higher pull on your map because it's randomly grabbing things and transforming them. And then at the very end, once you've kind of had, it's nice in the sense that like the big advantage of this is that if you're placing things into slightly smaller spaces, or if there's a spot that you need to look a very particular way, you can place all these and it'll actually scale. So like most of my grass is relatively uniform in size with, minor differences, but like it's relatively uniform. The rotation is different. They're not all the same that way, but scaling wise, there isn't a whole lot of scale difference. And so it can make the grass look a little bit cartoony and homogenized, but it's already kind of cartoony, frankly. And I'm okay with that because the rest of the space is kind of a little cartoony. So I ended up going with this because it bakes them in a little bit better, but B, I can be a little bit more targeted. So I wanted to make sure that there was a couple open spaces that felt natural or good to, build if you once you got to that phase. But yeah, I also added some out of bounds blockage so that players can really access the spaces that I sort of intended them to reach. Yeah, the big thing with the water that I need to alter if I were to keep developing this particular program is that there isn't currently a swim or like a swim mechanic or anything that would prevent me from just walking through the deep water. So that is one thing, but and one last thing. Didn't do it in here. So I did build a water, which I could real quick swap in. I can't swap in. But I did build a water when I was first considering making it. So you just get the two texture samples and you do a panner in slightly different directions and it creates more or less a waterish dynamic with the base color and an absorption. Really easy. But I actually came to show you my grass clump. Oh, that's my grass clump instance. Nope, I want to show you the base map. So this is how I made my grass. So you get two base colors, and I could add textures to this too, so it's less cartoony. But lerping between these two with a linear gradient. So the base of the grass is darker than the tip of the grass, which is pretty typical. And then you just spawn in a simple grasswind node with a -1, because otherwise it shakes the bottom of the grass and not the top of the grass. So a -1 node, then promote each of these to parameters so you can make an instance and then alter the wind speed. So if it doesn't seem like if you want it to have a little less movement or a little bit more movement, you can kind of tweak that in game. This is just a 0 because you don't want additional offset. But yeah, a nice and simple little kind of grass wind is kind of where I had settled on it. So without further ado, I'll show off the bit of the game. So running around is kind of what we're looking at now. I adjusted things down. I wanted there to be a lot of trees and less stone, kind of space things out. So come in and grab a bunch of trees. Otherwise I won't have enough trees. I think going forward I would probably I'll have the stamina and hunger go up a little bit more. And add a stamina depletion on interaction. So instead of it just steadily going down, I'd also add it. You get hungry when you cut down trees. About halfway there. Built a little stone bridge. And harvest some stone. All right, so we got all our bits. So we can open our menu now, eat some food, and then let's build some stuff. Let's build a floor, a couple walls, build 2 ceilings. Yeah. And then we can come in, we can build a floor, which I made to look like my stone. Then I can build a couple of quick walls. One. Build another wall. I guess the one thing with the building mechanic that I'd really like to add is I did not scale that. I meant to scale all of them so that it felt like you were building an actual house. But I haven't done that yet. Actually, one of the big things with the ceiling was that I was going to have this be something that you make a lot less of. So floors are cheap. Anyway, so you create a bunch of that. I never fixed this piece where it tries to close the other menu first. So it does kind of overlap a little bit. But yeah, there's our win condition. And yeah, pretty cool. So now I got a little silly looking house. But anyway, that's the game at the moment. Yeah, I was originally trying out foliage here, and that was all right. But this one is the one I ultimately went with. As far as like stuff to like kind of polish this up, that's about it. Oh right, there's one quick thing. So wasn't able to figure out why my AI don't like their animation, because they will not swim. But I also haven't had time to figure out how to make me swim. So I just live under the water now. But that's it. Yeah. This was really fun to pick, particularly this week. This is a little bit more, I think, where a lot of my skill set kind of is. So I was trying to use your advice from earlier in the semester and think about the type of roles I'm sort of angling for, and level design is really sort of on my list of parts that I think I would really love to be into. And so this week I spent a lot of time trying to think about how to make this level feel cohesive and full and be look more like a polished artifact, even if some of the mechanics I'm still sort of struggling with a little bit. So I spent a little bit of time trying to make it look nice and feel like a nice thought out level. I don't know. I think I kind of did that. So anyway, this has been really fun, and yeah,